because I'm now introducing the next speaker, Chris Heilmann, and I thought really hard on how to introduce Chris, because who doesn't know Chris? Who needs an introduction to Chris? So I came up with this, Chris Heilmann, a man who needs no introduction, who is fluent in Erste allgemeine Verunsicherung lyrics, as we've seen yesterday, who knows more works from Helmut Qualtinger than I do, is here tonight. He's our keynote speaker. He makes the opening keynote. JavaScript is a buffet, not the enemy. Have a big welcome to Chris.
Hello. I like that he said, like, here tonight. Time zones, right? It's weird. Excellent. So hopefully you had a good travel here. Hopefully you realize it's getting really warm in here and it's really cold outside. So we're all going to have a cold for the next 4 weeks as a memory of this conference, which is good. And I was here to introduce this, and I thought long and hard what to do about it, because there's so many good talks today. There's so many great people here that talk about the cool new stuff that's happening in JavaScript. We're going to hear talks about the V8 engine and the inner workings of the V8 engine. We're going to see Henri at the end of it giving this wonderful crazy things you can do with JavaScript, that is demo scene stuff in the browser nowadays, and we're going to hear about Electron in between. So I didn't want to overwhelm you with the things that JavaScript can do. There's always these talks like the 10,000 things you need to do now, or you're going to be homeless tomorrow. And this is not what I think we should be about. So I wanted to give a bit of an introduction to what I think the JavaScript world is lacking at the moment, and how we're making our lives much harder than it should be. And I came up with this idea that JavaScript is a buffet and not the enemy, because JavaScript is not the enemy. It was a talk I gave the other day where I talked about how progressive enhancement is not as hard as we think it is, and that using JavaScript doesn't make you a bad person, just blocking out other people makes you a bad person. And my quote was actually, JavaScript is a buffet, not a main course. And it got quite some retweets, and people like, what the hell are you on about? And it's mostly because I'm never at home and I just at conferences and hotels, so I got used to eating from buffets. But what I meant with it is that JavaScript has grown so much in the last 2 years that it became something completely different than it used to be. It used to be this weird language that was invented in 10 days of drug-infused frenzy by some person who had to create something new that runs in the client side. And nowadays we do everything in JavaScript. So JavaScript is not only a language anymore, but it's actually, it's not a part of the web stack. It's a development environment in its own right. People start and end in JavaScript. We're not just writing HTML, CSS, and sprinkle a bit of JavaScript fairy dust on the end of it to make it better. I still do that. I still like working that way. But many people use JavaScript for completely different things. You are not aware how many things you see daily that are running on JavaScript. It's quite impressive what you can do with it. And we want and we do everything in JavaScript. And that's always a bit of a weird thing, that people jump to JavaScript as the first thing. I get the same issue when people have like CSS-only solutions. To me, it's always a good solution, uses each part of the technology that does the things right, not just one of them, but we love doing everything in JavaScript. And it's quite funny when you see talks or you see like introduction, they're like, it's just JavaScript, it's easy to understand. And most of the time, it's just JavaScript means like, here's an API that you've never seen in your whole world, that is not documented, that somebody put together in 12 NPM packages. Good luck. You know, knowing the language is not enough. Most of the time, you have to know the environment that you're running it in. You have to know the problems with it as well. And it does cause a lot of confusion. That we do everything with JavaScript, and people coming from higher languages are like, why would you do this? This is a toy language. People coming from CSS like, so hard to do. This was in Portugal the other day, and I was just standing there like, how is a pizza with eggs on it a London thing, together with a drink that you only get in Portugal? So this is the kind of feeling that I get when people tell me like it's just JavaScript. And I thought I knew it. I wrote 5 books on the thing. But most of the time I'm just looking at stuff and I'm no idea what you meant. I'm worried about the state of our web and our community. The web, first of all, I almost said great talk because I'm really excited that I gave it at the Internet Days in Sweden, where I pretended to be a psychologist that interviewed a depressed internet. and because it feels fat and it feels not useful, which is what we made the web to be. If the average website is 2.2 megabyte and 1.2 megabyte of that is JavaScript, I just wonder what we're doing with the web. It's not necessary that we fill it with things all the time, but I'm more worried about the state of our community, because we work in the open and with very flexible technologies. If JavaScript is anything, then it's flexible. Some say undefined, some say confusing, some say undefined is not defined, like error messages from Internet Explorer 6 back then. But we're not as open and flexible as our technologies are. We know that JavaScript is not the end all, and we know it is not a perfect solution, but we keep telling people to use it for everything, or they're not ready for it yet. I see a lot of drama and dogma and less flexibility and understanding. You know, there's clashes of the people like, oh my God, you use JavaScript for something that HTML can do in itself, you're a bastard. And people like, oh, you're using HTML and it doesn't work in Internet Explorer 5 on this old computer, you're a bastard. And I'm like, this drama and dogma is just annoying me, because we should be flexible and inviting. Because if anything that I learned about JavaScript, and I'm doing a lot of that lately, is that it's easy to get people started with it. It doesn't need an IDE, it doesn't need a development environment, it needs a bloody text editor and a browser. And you can't even use developer tools nowadays to write JavaScript inside the browser itself. We've contained our development environment to the things that we're consuming the internet with. And this is great, because when consumption and creation gets as close together as possible, then anybody can become a creator. And if anything, we need more creators on the internet right now, and not just people writing things on Twitter that are awful. We need more people to build things, use the internet, and build great things with it. And worst of all, there's a lot of arrogance and intimidation. Arrogance in terms of like, oh, that never worked, it will never work now. That we made that mistake before, why are you doing this again? And intimidation is not like that we're intimidating people by shouting at them, although that happens as well, but it's more that like, you're not a professional developer if you don't use this. If I became a new developer right now and I would come on the web and would look around and everybody telling me, use these 10 things or you're not professional, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be professional then. I'm going to do something else, goat farming or something like that. It's much more fun. And this kind of intimidation is killing us, because what we really need to have is more diversity in our market, because people from different backgrounds, people with different skill sets, building things together means we build products for end users, because weirdly enough, our end users are diverse and different as well. We are not our end users at all. So today I want us to stop and think about how we can use JavaScript and share the excitement of it. We can share the happiness and the flexibility of it, rather than just saying like, you're not professional if you don't use these 10,000 modules, and why do you do this and so on. Now, a bit of a caveat. I'm not forbidding anyone to do whatever they want to. This is a very, very broken thing that happened to me a few times now at conferences, where I said something, I made a statement, you know, I allowed myself to say something, and then like, are you telling me I'm not allowed to do this and that? And I'm like, no, I don't have that power. You can do whatever the hell you want, as long as it doesn't interfere with other people, as long as it doesn't block other people out. You're your master of your own little world. If you want to mix the cake and the fish, go ahead. It's fine, it's not my tummy, it's not my problem. But I'm not forbidding you to do things. What I want to talk about is what we could do and what we could think about a bit more to become a better community and to build better things together, and not be someone in a community people are afraid of, and something that people like JavaScript is hard to do. I see courses right now that say JavaScript for designers, and this angers me. Like, this really, really angers me, because it's belittling designers. It's like that. It's not a skill set that you need to be a mathematician to actually use JavaScript. You build interfaces that are interactive. We need designers to help us with that, because we're crap at these things, most of us. Sometimes we have people who are totally talented, which are just bastards. I want to see us becoming more diverse and more interesting and more engaging for people. I love this buffet at the British Airways lounge. It's only white toast. Different shades of gray, but that's about it, you know. But this is not what we should be like. We should be more of a thing that a lot more interesting. So let's go back to the buffet metaphor, because I'm hammering this home like dead horse kick, you know. Buffets are great. You will probably see something like that. They're great because, first of all, they feed a lot of people in a short amount of time. You don't have to wait for everybody to get their meal before, and then, you know that awkward moment when you all sit on the table and one person doesn't have his meal yet and everybody else sees their meal getting colder and colder, and we can't start yet. With Buffays, yeah, get yourself together, start eating. They allow people to make their own decisions, so you don't have the problem of like, oh, but I'm vegetarian and it's full moon and my first name starts with a K, I can't eat that now, so none of us can have that. Make your own decision, choose whatever you want. They create less waste because people only take what they need, or so we think, if greed doesn't come into it. It's not like a whole meal where people leave half of it on the plate and then throw it away. And best of all, they're asynchronous, and we all love asynchronous things, because you can cook while people are eating. You don't have to wait for everybody to get their meal before you start eating, so that's a pretty good thing. Of course, buffets have issues as well. First of all, they're most of the time lesser quality food, because you make a lot of food for a lot of people, and you don't have time to actually get the last little bit of like flavoring into the. What am I talking about? I live in England. We don't use flavoring, but. Anyways, the quality is normally not as good as with a full meal. They might contain things that make people sick. So there might be things in there that people can't eat, and if you have a peanut allergy or you're lactose intolerant, you always have to hope these little signs say the right things when there is a mix already there. You hope that everything is fresh and gets renewed when not used, and not put out the next day again and just spray painted or something like that. You never know how the quality of the thing is. And everybody has their hands in them, and you hope that they use the right tools to take their part. You know, it's like people are like, oh yeah, well, I don't use the tongs provided. I just use my hands after sneezing in my hands or whatever. And it happens, sadly enough. And this is pretty much where we are with JavaScript right now. Everybody has their hands in it. Everybody wants to do something with it. We don't know the quality of something. Just use this package. Don't try to understand it. It's fine. It solves your problem. And then if you don't know what is in there, if you don't know the upgrade cycle of it, you might have a security hole in the middle of your app without knowing it. Cool. User testing, unit testing is against that. But we're using a lot of stuff that other people have been doing to be faster, and we wonder if that's the right thing. Now, I realized that when it comes to Buffays and to JavaScript, the same etiquette, the same way of dealing with other people applies. Or that's what I thought myself, because I subscribed to this metaphor, and now I'm going to run it to the ground. So the first thing, don't cherry pick and leave nothing for others. That's always the worst people. When you go to breakfast and they just basically get all the salmon and put it on their plate, and everybody else needs to get the dry bread and like cranberry juice or whatever. And don't just pick one thing. Of course you have the right to do it, but it's just a terrible move to other people. Take as much as you need and take the thing that is good for you, but leave something for others as well. What I mean by that in JavaScript is development environments. Your environment is very much you and probably nobody else. And this is great. This is get as effective as you can. Find the editor of your choice, find the browser of your choice, find the debugging protocol of your choice, and stick with it and become a god when it comes to development. But don't expect that everybody else has to change their environments to work with you. That confuses me when people are like, oh, you should use Chrome because otherwise you're not a JavaScript developer. What? You know, I know people that never touched a browser who are a great JavaScript developer. You should use this kind of editor, or otherwise you're wasting a lot of time. I use a lot of people Visual Studio right now. I don't have time to look at the old editor and understand the IDE before I start coding. I'm too impatient for that. I just want to start coding. That's why Visual Studio Code is fun, because you get the IntelliSense inside a normal editor. It's great that you own your environment and you customize it to your needs. Be as effective as you want to, but think about that people are not you. So if what you release becomes a dependency on the things that you build it in, then we have a problem, because you don't want people to reset their editors just to be able to consume your code in their products. Share what makes you happy and makes you more effective. So if you're happy with that, cool, write that blog post, but don't say you're not professional if you don't do the same thing. Just say, here's what helped me. And these are the coolest, nicest posts out there. This is stuff that I retweet, that other people retweet, because you're not bashing people on the head with your effectiveness. You just tell them, like, this is what worked for me in my environment, with my clients, with my environment I work in. Help improve the tools you use and you love. All our editors are hackable nowadays. They're written in CoffeeScript or in TypeScript or even in JavaScript itself. Developer tools are written in JavaScript. They're not in C# or C++ any longer. We have the tools and we have the chance to make those tools better. So using open source doesn't mean that you use free code. It means that you become part of a community, and part of that is to give back once you found something broken and not go to Twitter and say like, it's broken. Great. You can fix that. Put that extra time in, because the time that you won by using somebody else's code, you should give some of that back. Much like you don't just use the fancy bits in the Buffay and leave the other ones hanging. Don't pick the things you like and demand people to accommodate to your needs. This is how I code my code. This is the only way of doing it. Let's talk about tabs and spaces and curly braces on a new line or not line for the 500th time. And you're like, really? This is the most boring things ever. If something can be converted from one code style to another by a script, let a script do that. Let's not people confuse these things. That is really important. Important is that our end users get something that's beautiful, fast, and lets them do things. We are here to deliver interfaces to people. That could be data interfaces, that could be graphical interfaces. Our job is to make people love the internet and love using software, not how effective we are or what comma style or semicolon style we have. Make sure you explain in detail what you rely on and why. So if you have an open source project and you say like, okay, I'm using this editor, that's why there's these 10,000 source files and these kind of things in there. If you don't use them, please don't touch them. But if I use them because it makes me this effective because of this and that. Explain the things that are in your repository. Don't just expect people to know what these things are. We're creating a service, and the more you think about others, the more success you will have. The easier it is to work with you in the open, in an open source project, the more people will start working with you. The more dogmatic you become and say like, I'm not going to take your code because the semicolon is in the wrong direction or whatever, this is not a way to expect people to work with you. They already give you their free time, they already give you their knowledge, so be nice to them. And be ready to be flexible. Flexibility is what made the internet what it is right now. So there's no one way of doing something. There never was one way to do something. Don't try to reuse dirty plates. This is actually a law in California. I learned that the hard way, that if you go back to the buffet with a plate that's already used, they're going to shoot you or something. Well, not really, but not yet. They're basically just very angry with you. And that's the same thing with development, and especially web development right now. What do I mean with that? Some things should not be used on the web any longer. And the argument that you cannot use an ES 2015 or ES 2016 API because you have to support Internet Explorer 6 is a very stupid argument. Because in essence what you're doing is you're allowing the web to become stale, vulnerable, and insecure. These browsers are not there because people want to use them. These browsers are there because people are forced to use them, are locked down into systems that were only written to work in those browsers. And I work for the company where a lot of our sites only work in Internet Explorer because they were built with SitePoint in 2005. And there's no way to actually spend money and time to rewrite these things. That should not hold us back from innovating. That should not hold us back from making better things for the people that have systems that haven't been stagnating for the last 20 years. And I'm including Android browsers in the older Android machines, when Android was still completely coupled with the browser and there was no way to update these things. These are security problems. These are not browsers. These are very terrible things. And don't confuse that people think who have to work with Internet Explorer 6 are expecting beautiful interfaces. You confuse them if you give them something pretty. Give them the normal forms and the drop-down menus that they've been learned to hate and forget for the last 15 years. I call this the Stockholm syndrome of interfaces. When you build something, when you have to use something so horrible every single day, you start defending it because you cannot be stupid enough to use something horrible every day, right? We have to somehow make it for ourselves better. It's not okay to block these things. It's okay, but it's a waste of time to support them 100%. A polyfill that gives CSS animations to Internet Explorer 6 is a waste of time. Saying you need Chrome to use this website is also a waste of time because it's arrogant and it's stupid. Because some people I love it when you're an engineer on a certain browser, and then you go on holiday, and you go to the hotel lobby where there's no wireless and no connectivity, and you get these old Mac IEs with Internet Explorer 5.02 on them, and you're like, this is your internet now. Where is your God now, kind of thing. Like, you can never control the environment. So make sure that you don't block anybody out. Just don't give them interfaces that they choke on. Give them something that is as simple as possible and does the main job. The other stuff, to make it easy, to make it beautiful, to put the extra stuff on top of it, fine. Twitter used to be an interface where I can text to and send a tweet. This is great. This is good enough. Sorry. Twitter doesn't like it. Fair enough. Now I feel not confident to keep going. In any ways, we can't move forward carrying the weight of failed APIs and broken implementations. It hurt me so much when I went from Firefox to Microsoft and we started building Edge, and I'm like, cool, we're getting rid of all these broken things in Internet Explorer, and we built a new browser from scratch, standard compliant. And then we put it on the web, and nothing worked. Because people relied on WebKit prefixes, people relied on MS prefixes, only a few. People relied on APIs implemented in not the standard way in other browsers. So to make our browser not suck and people complaining about the browser, we had to put a lot of interoperability into them. And every browser maker has to do that. Mozilla just hired Ola for that, and a few other people. Interoperability is 30% of our job as browser makers, not breaking the web because something else that is broken, people are relying on. So make sure you don't rely on broken things, but I've said that for 8 years and it doesn't matter. In any ways, this also includes to me polyfills that aren't included on demand. A polyfill is a great solution to use technology that's coming next right now. But if your polyfill becomes stagnant and gets included every single time, even when all browsers have caught up and don't need it anymore, that is dead code that is being loaded on the internet. And dead code and unloved code is a terrible thing. Think about the code. Code needs love. Unloved code on the internet, don't do that. The web needs to be evergreen. There's no way we can have a secure web and have a web that can compete with closed environments and native environments if it's not evergreen and if browser bugs cannot be fixed as fast as possible. So please, as developers, do not fight against this. Try to get people to upgrade, try to embrace what's coming next, and do an if statement around your things and give a functionality to browsers that don't understand the new stuff, but give them something that works. Don't put meat in the veggie section. That's another fun thing to do on a buffet when you basically just take the spoon that has the meat and put it on the cheese, and then people are like, oh my God, this is terrible. But people can't, some people don't want to eat meat, some people can't eat meat, so don't mix those things. And this is where I'm talking about JavaScript being applied in environments where they're just not applicable, where they're just not necessary and they're not possible. There are quite a few browsers and environments where JavaScript is restricted. It's restricted and it's actually not available in some cases. I mean, not available. The case of like no JavaScript at all is a very odd case because that's mostly very angry people that just turn off the JavaScript and want to show you that it's broken. The case of JavaScript maybe being there, but you have no idea about what's going on, is the internet. So there's no way you can always say, like, every one of my users has JavaScript enabled, and we all have seen that at flaky connections when out of a sudden Facebook tells me the script is timing out because it takes too long to connect on something, and I'm like, okay, reload. Nothing broken, nothing terrible. Reload, all my content is still there, everything is still saved, but there are environments where your JavaScript will be mangled with, will be changed with. And there's like there's Opera Mini, there's the Silk browser from Amazon, there's the Squirrel browser, which is something, and there's the Puffin browser. And these are all mobile browsers in environments where connectivity is very expensive and very scarce. So instead of just sending the data from an American server to India, they cache it in an Indian server before that and only give you HTML string back. They take your CSS, they take your JavaScript, they downsample your images, and then give the user something that they can actually consume, which might look terrible, but it's consumable. It's not a spinner that doesn't do anything. So think about these environments that are there, and it's fun to actually use Opera Mini on your own mobile phone from time to time to try things out. And JavaScript is also used to spy on users, and that doesn't mean, though, that we have to demonize it. That basically is like, turn off all JavaScript because it's terrible. We have to fight this. The bad guys using JavaScript, giving JavaScript a bad name, we have to fight this and be better at that. And AdBlock Plus and Brave and others are filtering out ads from the internet. That's admirable, that's nice, but that is a first world solution. We are in the great position that we can filter those things out, but we shouldn't be surprised if advertising becomes more aggressive and if advertising becomes more annoying the more we block it. Somehow, somewhere, people have to pay for stuff. And this is sadly enough advertising, and it's the most broken thing on the internet right now. The advertising model of the internet doesn't work. We have to get a better way of payments on the internet. We have to get better at showing things to people that are relevant to them. And even artificial intelligence doesn't work us right now. I just bought a suitcase on Amazon. What do I get? 15 ads about, do you want to buy another suitcase? No. I don't need that many suitcases, weirdly enough, you know, like I'm happy until this one breaks to use that one. It's not something that you buy a lot. It's the same with cars. It's like, no. So JavaScript being a security problem is something we have to tackle, and something we have to tackle very vigilantly in our own code and our own code quality as well. Different use cases of JavaScript have totally different needs. A node solution and a DOM scripting solution that should be backwards compatible to older browsers do not follow the same rules. So it makes no sense if those two worlds argue with each other who's the better, more professional coder. These are different use cases, these are different rules. Some rules apply to all of them, don't call things that are unreadable, but the way you actually shave off 50 milliseconds by reversing a loop doesn't really make any sense to anybody working on the server. It's much more important not to hammer your RAM consumption and not to hammer the tick on the server like that. Each one of those have best practices and sensible approaches. Let's talk about sensible approaches more, rather than calling something best practice. A best practice, to me, is found in production. It's very much dependent on the group that is using it and the environment it's executed in. That could be anything that could be terrible somewhere else, but it's a best practice for that product. A best practice is a very, very rare thing. So let's not say this is a best practice, you should start with that, otherwise you're not professional. They don't need to mix. Sometimes they're antithetical. Something that makes totally sense in a node environment is totally terrible on the web, and something really, really good on the web is totally useless or a waste of time for you in a node environment or a Tesla environment or whatever else you do. You can script Illustrator with JavaScript. It's pretty fun, actually. And it's okay. We can evolve JavaScript on different tracks. We don't have to have one JavaScript to rule them all. This is the benefit of having a language that is basically doesn't have to be compiled, but compiles on the fly and actually is a very, very strange language. I love it for that. Don't pile up your plate. Don't be the guy that goes to a buffet and puts like all the food on it and then goes back and like wastes half of it throwing in the room or something like that and then leaves half of it. You can go back, get a new plate, eat more. It's totally fine. It can be daunting to look at the JavaScript world right now. When you look at, like, there was this massive Medium article where it's like, oh, it's really hard to be a JavaScript developer right now, and then it was very sarcastic about how many Webpack settings you need and what many servers you have to set up and the command line and blah. And it was quite fun, but it was also very kind of brutal for people who really want to get into the JavaScript world. We hammer people with best practices and with tools to make ourselves more effective, rather than like allowing people to find these things themselves. The fetish of being effective and writing less code is something that is very weird to me, because sooner or later we have to understand that computers are getting better as well. Artificial intelligence is already writing artificial intelligence code. Highly optimized code will be written by machines for us, and that's good. Not in 10,000 workflow systems that you have to set up before you do. The other day, it was a 10-minute course of setting up 12 environments on your computer, and you're like, and what's that afterwards? It's like, these 3 things I didn't understand that you can learn in 10 minutes. I felt really stupid. And I felt really like maybe I should do something else instead of this job. Don't try to be everything. Find something you are excited about and do that at first. Become an expert in DOM scripting, in UX, in performance, in server-side, in messaging, in databases. Find something, some part of the stack that you're excited about and become the expert in that. Even in JavaScript world, understand one part of JavaScript well and concentrate on that, because this is your bread and butter. This is going to be your job. This is going to be how you make money and how you become successful in a company. Knowing the rest is important, but you cannot stretch yourself thin by learning everything. It doesn't work that way. Don't use the every cool new thing because it's cool and new. I get stressed, you know, like I go through my 3,000 subscriptions in RSS and I'm like, oh, cool new thing. Damn, I have to write a talk, I have to go to a client, I have to do something, I don't have time to do it. And then 3 days later, cool new thing, dangerous to use. And I'm like, well, good, I didn't spend time on that, you know. It's the amount of time we have, like, don't use the cool new thing that we just got excited about the day before is coming faster and faster, and the time is getting shorter and shorter as well. So just don't use it because they're cool and new. Use them in a downtime moment or when you really want to learn something new, but understand that sooner or later you have to deliver code for a living, or you have to deliver products for a living. So you cannot just change your environment all the time. I had job interviews where people told me flat out, like 20-year-old guys coming in, yes guys, coming in like, oh, I only work with that editor in that environment, otherwise we might as well stop the interview. I'm like, what? You know, my sister works in the unemployment office, and I see people struggling to find a job, and we're making a job interview depending on which editor we're going to use. How arrogant have we become? This is just ridiculous at times. Get to know the basics and go from there. Understand the basics of JavaScript. Understand the basics of how the language is being parsed, how the language is being turned into code, how the language is actually helping you to get better. Understand the DOM. Don't just say the DOM is slow. Understand why sometimes a virtual DOM is a better thing than using the DOM. Understand the power of the DOM. Understand how the interplay of CSS and JavaScript can be very, very successful for you. Understand that HTML is not a toy language and that somebody writing HTML is not a designer. Understand that this is structuring much like you're structuring code as well. If you publish something, think about collaborating from the very beginning, because you will get bored of it. You will not be the maintainer of your cool code for the next 15 years unless you get really, really strike gold and make lots of money with it as well. Think about collaboration from the very beginning. Documentation, tests, demos written by others allow you to question your own biases. It allows you to question your own code and understand that for others it might be hard to use. If you rewrite it a bit differently, it might be easier for use for them. And that means less work for you as well. That means you get an editorial review of your own code by allowing other people to write documentation and test demos and extensions for your code. A lot of stuff that went into Visual Studio Code we learned when we opened up extensions where people need these kind of interfaces to talk to the editor itself that we hadn't thought of before. Find a stack that allows you to deliver your work and don't rely on things you don't know yet. Find a stack that works. You know, the other day I wrote PHP. Because I friggin' know it, you know? It was just a list of links to download something. I did this in 20 seconds without thinking about it because I used PHP professionally in Yahoo for years. I didn't want to set up another node server and another thing, another webpack and blah, and I'm like, it was just a list of things. I know it's not going to change, so I'm using PHP, fine. There's nothing dirty about this. I shouldn't feel bad about it. I did, but you shouldn't. And just because you find something that people use something and it's cool to have it on your CV right now, you might not be able to rely on it. Talk to people who relied on Silverlight or Flash or Angular 1 to Angular 2 is not fun either, but it's necessary. So think about these kind of things. Think about that what you don't know yet and you're using. You don't call yourself an expert just by using it, by going through a course or just finding it, but this is what people do. And call out on bullshit in job descriptions. If people ask for like 5-year experience in a half-year-old program or tool, send them an email and say like, I did not apply for this job because you made a massive mistake there. We have to stop hyping up our job descriptions as well. It's just nuts what people put in there. Don't touch things you don't like and you don't want. Don't go to the buffet and like, nah. You know, if you don't like them and you don't want them, don't play with them, don't touch them, don't spoil them for others. And that is something that I keep seeing us arguing in our community over and over again about, and I don't see the point of that. It is okay not to understand something or not like it. If you don't understand how CSS works and you don't like the syntax of CSS, as a JavaScript developer, it always confuses me that exclamation mark important means important rather than not important as it should. Fine. That's totally okay. It's totally fine to not like something and not understand it. It's not okay to discard it and call people unprofessional for using it. That makes no sense. These are experts. These are humans. These are people that are actually, behind each line of code is a human with feelings, a human with problems, a human with experiences, a human who put effort in there, putting themselves out in the world to say, like, I want to do something with that. You don't have any right to call them unprofessional. You don't have any right to call them bad. You have a right to point out that some things might be ineffective. And if you form it as a question, you start a conversation. If you tell them this is broken, you should use that, you shouldn't be surprised that they don't answer or just get angry at you. JavaScript can be a great helper tool, but it doesn't need to replace everything. Not everything has to be done in JavaScript. Why do we do everything in JavaScript? Why do we create content in JavaScript? Why do we create styles in JavaScript? Because we want full control. Because we've been let down by old browsers, and we've been let down by even new browsers implementing things wrongly. And we give the opportunity in JavaScript to apply something, test if it applied properly, and then fix it if it didn't. In CSS, we don't have that. In CSS, we apply something, we hope the browser does do it right. We have no feedback channel. We don't know what happened. We have the benefit, though, that browsers can fix stuff for us in CSS, in animations, and these kind of things. So we use JavaScript to get full control over something and be able to fix it. And you know what? The web is so diverse and so weird, full control never happens. Not even in not the web cases. Try to be an Android developer and try to predict what phone it will run on. This is not the world anymore that we are. We cannot control the interface. It is not helpful trying to forcefully convert people as well. Like, you should learn JavaScript because you're obviously an expert in CSS, but that's all shit, so learn JavaScript. Don't need that. We need CSS experts. We need people who don't understand JavaScript to ask us questions that we haven't thought of. There's nothing better than getting stupid questions, because there are no stupid questions. There's just questions that have a lack of understanding. Much like there's no unknowns, there's no magic. It's just things we haven't analyzed enough yet that we go in towards. Use the cutlery provided. That's a very important thing as well. As I said before, the tongs to get the food out. Flexibility and control comes at a price. We want to control everything. We want to have full control of the interface. That's why we use JavaScript for everything. This also means that the more functionality you make dependent on scripting, the more responsibility you have. It is up to you to make this thing 60 frames per second. It is up to you to make sure that it doesn't flicker. It's up to you to make sure that whatever the end user does to your interface doesn't break the limited interface that you created. A lot of good development means giving up that control and allowing the browser, the environment, and things to fix things for us. This feels weird as a developer because you don't want to rely on the unknown, but you have to at times. And when you control everything with JavaScript, okay, here's lots of code that you have to send to your end user, and you hope that it's going to get executed. You hope it gets understood because you have no control over the environment. If you use the web platform to solve an issue, use it. Use HTML, use CSS, use JavaScript, use HTTP, use server-side caching, use understanding e-tags, use understanding how performance on the server can help your code as well, rather than you controlling everything. The web is a lot of different moving parts, and all of them have interesting bits and bobs in it. But as soon as you use the web platform itself, instead of just doing everything with the big one include of JavaScript, you realize that you have much more support for environments you haven't even thought of. Out of a sudden, you have users in like old browsers that say like, hey, I can use it. You have blind users. You have people who can't use their hands. You have people that only can use one hand. And it's not unarmed people. It might be a new parent with their baby on their arm trying to do something on their phone. People change. People have different use cases. So the web, the W3C standards and the web interfaces that we have been so slow comparatively in innovating because they have to think about all these things. They have to think about all the implementations and not just the one that we are. It also allows browsers creators to optimize for you. A lot of stuff that we do in JavaScript, and I hope Franziska is going to talk about that in the engine, we do a lot of optimization in the JavaScript engine for you if you don't code against us. If you have a named function, we can cache that thing, and we can call the bytecode again without having to re-evaluate it. If you create new unnamed methods and functions in a loop all the time, we don't have a chance to do that for you. We make sure a CSS animation will run in a good frame rate. We make sure that we gave you something like request animation frame, so you have full control over the animation frames rather than having a timeout that works against the animation of the browser. We give you all these good APIs, and we optimize them. So if you get to choose CSS to do something for you, let it do its thing, because the browsers optimize that for you. And I'm really looking forward to the next version of Firefox having a Rust-based engine in CSS. This is going to be very, very good as competitive for the other browsers again, because it's going to be a huge impact in terms of how CSS renders in Firefox. The fewer code you ship to the user, the better. The end user has something you don't know. It might be a cool iPhone 7, it might be an Android they got for Christmas 6 years ago and don't want to do something new with. It might be a machine that is busy in another tab with a game or like Netflix or whatever, or playing things. You have no control over these things. There's a great talk by Alex Russell about the perceived performance of mobile devices that we have right now, that like, oh, it's got 6 cores and 12 video chips and it's great and it heals children and whatever. But as soon as a mobile phone is hot, all of this is out the window. All of these processors are slow as hell, and basically the memory consumption is going sky high. So unless you have your phone in a freezer, you really have a very, very short amount of time, like 50 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds even, to execute your code before it gets slower. So the amount of numbers that we throw at people, how fast computers are kind of a big lie. It's a really, really good talk. It was at the Some Summit, lots of them right now. I can find it later. It was really, really good. Consider making several trips to a buffet. Don't go pile up the cake with the fish and the potatoes on the same plate. Think about doing several trips and eating only what you need in between. And the same thing applies to code again. We have an unfortunate drive to deliver all the functionality on first interaction in our products. This is what we learned from like the terrible thing that is apps. Like, oh, the app does everything as soon as I load it. Yeah, because you downloaded 50 meg and installed it, and then you started it. You don't download 50 meg on the internet and wait for people to load it and then do it. It's much better to build an interface that gives the most use case up front and then makes it better after subsequent loads. It isn't sensible in terms of data size and code that needs to get parsed and executed in an unknown environment. Again, there's a great the Chrome team did some very, very good research, and we're releasing something soon as well about this. How much it actually costs to parse and execute the JavaScript on a mobile device. You don't understand. You cannot simulate this on a desktop as well. You have to try it on a real device. So it's very easy on a fast connection to download 1.5 meg of JavaScript and then it allows you to be very effective. But the end user basically has run out of memory by the time it actually tries to get the first functionality of the website out there. It also doesn't allow us to deliver the right solution to the current environment. By bootstrapping your solutions and giving the first solution in HTML and then making it better, you can do a lot of if statements in between and say like, hey, does this browser know this API? Cool, then I need this API. If not, I download that polyfill to help me override that problem. But you don't need to put that polyfill into a system that already supports it, and you don't need to. You cannot call a fetch API on a browser that doesn't support it. I'm very happy with that Safari yesterday, the new release. They're catching up as well. Everything now that I wanted to have is getting in there. Things like a download attribute on a link. That's friggin' cool. Fetch, really, really good. Takes the stupidity out of XHR and the errors out of XHR. There's so many good APIs coming. But make sure you test for them, and if they're not available, use a polyfill. But don't use a polyfill for everybody, because the less code you send to the end user, the happier your end users are. Consider not using the one-size-fits-all solution that makes you more effective. This is not what we're here for. This is not about us having a great time coding all the time. Yes, it's fun to do that. It makes us more effective as well. But we're getting paid for this. You know, the people cleaning out the dishes at a buffet, the people taking your rubbish away in front of your house, they don't do that because they love rubbish. They do that because they get paid for it. We get paid to build things that make people use the internet. We don't get paid to actually make ourselves more effective all the time. This is a great idea to have. There's a lot of research opportunity in there, but it's not our day-to-day job. Our effectiveness should be reflected in the great products that we build. Deliver a progressively improving situation. This is progressive enhancement. I've been hanging around that for years, but it also means like progressive web apps. There's no question anymore if progressive web apps are a great idea. Just look at that stuff. It makes total sense. Service worker can be applied to any old crappy HTML page, old HTML app, and make it better. The more you can store on people's computers, the more you can store on people's mobile devices, the less has to be downloaded on a flaky connection that might break. That's a great opportunity that we have right now. Service worker is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and there's lots and lots of good work going on there. All the code that didn't get loaded and executed is a benefit in a flaky connection world, and we always have a flaky connection world. Don't get fooled by connections at home. Try go out there, try right now here to use the wireless, and you know what I mean. I'm going to finish with a thing that you shouldn't, at the same time, don't be afraid to taste. It sounded like I'm like being reactionist and saying like, oh, don't do new things. No, do new things. Try new things out, but also understand that you're a professional. Understand that you have to have a base to come from. You have to have something that you can deliver without thinking about it that became muscle memory already. We live in great times where you can learn most of what you need in our market online and for free. Go to YouTube. Every conference has the talks there. Wonderful online courses, like Khan Academy. You can learn almost everything online and for free for now. We're going to see what the new American government and what the English government is going to do to it. But for now, everything is online and free and beautiful. So go and use that stuff. Don't spend, if you got half an hour time off, download one of those videos. There's a Python script to download it from YouTube. And watch it. Learn something while you're on the go. Don't get bored and just play a random game again for the 600th time. Find your free time to do something and try to be part of this. People put these things online for free for a reason. They just want you to use it. So let's use them. Go and play. Try something new. Kick the tires of products people sell you as amazing. I'm not demonizing React. I'm not demonizing Angular 2. I'm not demonizing anything. I'm trying them out when I find time to do them. But I'm wary. I'm getting there when somebody tells me this is the best solution ever and makes our job much easier. I heard that too many times. I heard that too often. And I also don't want my job to be easier because if my job is an expert job, I get expert pay. You know, we're optimizing ourselves out of a market. That's kind of weird. Just because we want to be optimized. What's next? What's coming next? Machine learning. Yay. Like, I love this stuff, but I'm also scared of it because even I am not safe in my job. Don't sit on your laurels. There's so much to explore out there. I could now sit back and be like the JavaScript god from 2006 when I wrote my book and only talk about these things are the most important things. It's very easy to give a talk about like, don't break the web. Don't change anything that we've done in 2004 because you would break the web if you do it. But this is just being boring. This is just sitting on your own stuff. We have to push ourselves to make new things, to find out new things all the time, to become competitive and to be actually interested. Be sure to use the opportunity to watch videos, take courses, and take part in open source projects. This is daunting, this is scary. And every open source project that I mentor, I tell them, have beginner bugs. Have things that are very easy to fix, that are boring for engineers on the product to build, to fix, but would allow a new developer to come in, fix a bug, and understand the structure of your project while actually fixing a bug. And how cool is that as the first thing? You're an effective part of the thing that you want to be part of from the get-go. You're not somebody who just comes in and doesn't understand things and asks stupid questions. Beginner bugs is a very, very important thing for any open source project to have. And it's a great opportunity for you to play with the project and sometimes realize, okay, even if the project is not for you, at least you fixed the bug for them, so you already have a good relationship with the people that run the original project. Make sure to explain this to your companies and demand time to keep learning. I'm getting angry when I hear that on average we are in a company 1 to 2 years, and this is seen as a normal thing. This is not sustainable. This is not allowing us to have a healthy job and a healthy social life and a healthy life, actually. This is burning ourselves out. We're being pushed into the world of investment bankers from the 1980s. You know, these assholes we see on television and we hate. We are becoming those. We are becoming these overly competitive, very, very efficient, very, very angry people that want to do more and more and more and more all the time. Demand to be allowed to teach yourself new things. Demand downtime in your company, and demand a proper training program in your company as well. Companies, it costs you about £20,000 to get somebody through the door, no matter who it is, like paperwork and time and all the kind of things. So when somebody leaves, it costs the company a lot of money as well. Having a proper training program, having a proper support program for your engineers in your company makes me choose you as a company. I didn't go to Microsoft because I love the products, dear God, no. A lot of them I never touch, I never understood, I never have to deal with. But I went to this company because it invests in me. The 5-year question was not an interview question. The 5-year question was like, here is what we have in the next 5 years for you, which is a way that you think you want to go. And how cool is that? How much of a mature environment would we be if more companies did that and not like, oh, we're running out of investment in half a year, we have no idea what you're going to do. Code monkey, go. You know, we need you to use these 10,000 things so we can hire new engineers because we use the newest stuff. If you need help with this, let's talk. I help a lot of companies out with that, and I help a lot of, I come to companies on Skype and in brown bag talks to tell them how important it is to actually turn your engineers into humans and not only into numbers. It's a very important thing to keep ourselves happy. It's ridiculous that we're the most overpaid and pampered market with the most mental issues right now, which is like imposter syndrome and people being unhappy while being actually in a job, whereas other people have a hard time finding a job. Now to wrap up, what's for pudding? The JavaScript world and community is us. Whatever you do online, whatever you do in a commit, whatever you do in a pull request is part of the JavaScript community. You cannot say it's a toxic environment without doing something about it. You cannot say that it's a daunting environment without calling people out when they do daunting things. We have to watch each other and become better by telling each other off when we're doing wrong things. It is not one browser or engine or environment. Monoculture is stagnation. Let's not stagnate, but improve. Internet Explorer 6 was a gorgeous browser at its time. Building things only for Internet Explorer 6 is still haunting me. I wake up sweating every day because I have to fix these kind of things. And the same applies to only writing code for V8 in Node when there could be other JavaScript engines to support as well. Think about flexibility. Think about moving parts getting exchanged all the time. Think about providing standards, supporting standards, instead of supporting one thing that is cool right now and shouting at other browsers to support it as well. I love that coexist thing that my colleague has done with different browser logos. It took a while for me to find out. So there are many ways you can help this community and not all are hardcore coding. Like we need humans. We need people who use words and feelings and talk to each other and help each other out. We need people who write documentation. We need people who do like little screencasts of explaining how to use something for other people. We need to break the toxic demand of more code in less time. This is stupid. This is not impressive. When you tell me I spent 16 hours in the office yesterday and I wrote so much code, I'm like, okay, you're broken now. Take 2 days off. There's no way I can have you in a meeting without being grumpy, without being annoying for other people. Don't fall for that. You got to do more fast and things. What that is actually fast food. And fast food, quick, cheap, and fast, makes us sick in the long term. And this is what we're doing right now. Quick fixes, being more effective, using beta things in live productions because they make us more effective. This is great, but there's a place for that. It's called academia, it's called university, it's called schools, it's called downtime, research time. You don't research in production. That's a very, very scary thing. The whole move fast and break things drives me crazy because this is, again, a toxic way, the way bankers were in the 80s. It's basically an arrogant way of working and not sustainable in the long term. We need to deliver things that are digestible with good ingredients and non-fattening. So make your things as small as possible. Make your things do the one thing well and add other things at the end of it. And that needs time and effort and demand that you get that time. You're not here to churn out code. You're here to build interfaces that people use, love, and become more effective. And that's all I had, so thanks very much.